Hey guys, Yips here, coming in a video, and this one is going to be Affliction lock on the alpha beta servers. So I want to be talking to you guys about the changes from live compared to now. I want to talk to you guys a little bit about the talents and about the playstyle and how I feel about the class as a whole. So Affliction lock, it's okay. It could be worse, I guess, but it's definitely not as good as it is on live servers right now. There's a lot about the class that I feel like they could have improved on. But I feel like they took a step backwards for sure. On multi-target, I still feel like Affliction is very enjoyable to play, and I feel like it will be very strong. But on single target, I feel like Affliction is extremely lackluster in terms of, one, thinking about doing damage on the fight, and then two, your rotation is just fucking boring. So those are just two kind of issues that I really have about Warlock. Is single target is super boring. Multi-target is good, but it's not as good as it on live, and then obviously fights with little ads you can no longer abuse, which I think, is kind of good because it makes balancing for Blizzard a little bit easier. But at the same time, it's kind of like, man, it was kind of fun to have that niche where you could go into a boss like Portal Keeper and do 3 million DPS, right? So there's that. So if you're wondering what's changed, what I'm talking about, obviously we lost our artifact weapon, which means no more Reap Souls, no more double traits, no more Soul Flame, no more Wrath of Consumption, no more Drain Soul, no more Soul Shard sniping, and to replace that we have Shadow Bolt, we have Passive Contagion, we have some abilities that increase our damage over the time on the boss, and then we have some kind of cool talents that I'll talk about in a minute here. So if you're wondering what I mean by a built-in contagion, Unstable Affliction just passively increases the damage dealt by 10% to the targets afflicted by it. This is kind of cool because on live servers right now you have the talent in contagion. So just on these servers here, we just have it built into the ability. So obviously that means on multiple targets you're going to want to spread out your Unstable Afflictions in order to increase the damage of your other abilities. But on single target, obviously you're going to be just spreading them out so that you deal as much damage as possible with them. However, the talents, we're going to be taking a look at those. We now have Death Bolt and Shadow Embrace in the tier 1. We have Death Embrace in the tier 2, which has changed. We have Nightfall and Creeping Death, which are different. So all the talents that look the same are pretty much the same as they are on live right now. They function the same way. They have the same effect, plus or minus a few percent either way here or there. Haunt has a 15-second cooldown instead of a 25-second cooldown. Soul Conduit is 15% instead of 20%. Soul Harvest is 4 seconds instead of 10 seconds, but still has the same max duration. So the Seeds only does 1 seed instead of 2 seeds. So just, a couple of tweaks, nothing too major, but most of the talents do the same thing. The ones that are different, obviously Shadow Embrace. Shadow Bolt applies a Shadowy Embrace to the target. It's basically just a debuff that increases your damage dealt up to 9% on the target, 3% per stack, stacks 3 times. And then we have Death Bolt. Now what Death Bolt does is when you have a lot of dots on the mob, it just takes those dots and just does a whack load of damage. So you have like 3 Unstable Afflictions on the target and you cast Death Bolt, 40% of the remaining damage of those Unstable Afflictions will be dealt to the boss in full. So obviously this will be very good on fights where we have a lot of shard generation and we're pumping single target, cast a bunch of UAs on the boss, cast a Death Bolt, boom, yada, bam, big daddy deeps, right? So that's kind of cool. Creeping Death, your Agony, Corruption, and Unstable Affliction deal the full damage 15% faster. Obviously, this has some negative synergy with Death Bolt because your dots are falling off 15% faster, meaning their max duration is not optimized with Death Bolt, so you're probably not going to use them together, but I definitely see Creeping Death being a powerful talent. Obviously, your dots have more value than casting a Shadow Bolt, so, that's cool. Again, if you're on too many targets, sometimes, having this extra quick Agony, Corruption, and Unstable Affliction is a bad thing. Sometimes it's a good thing, but if you're not talented to Absolute Corruption, it could end up being a pain keeping your dots on multiple targets, but either way, I think it's a fun talent, I think it's a cool talent, and I like it. So yeah, let's talk about the level 1 traits. So Death Bolt and Haunt, let's talk about how these affect your playstyle on single targets. So with a built-in Contagion, you want to be thinking, first, do I want to maintain 100% uptime on this? With Haunt, yes you do. Haunt you can pretty much keep up all the time. So, when you're on a single target fight now, and you have Haunt talented, you want to make sure that you're, oops, let me put Haunt on my bar so we can actually use the ability. You want to be making sure that you're keeping Haunt up 100% of the time, and Unstable Affliction 100% of the time, and then you're casting Shadow Bolt as a filler. So obviously, you're going to be using Haunt whenever it is off CD, making sure that you're maintaining your Unstable Afflictions on the boss for that 10% increased damage. So here I'll do one more Unstable Affliction, cast one more Shadow Bolt, and then we will have time to cast a Haunt here, cast one more UAS to maintain that 10% bonus, and then we'll just be spamming Shadow Bolt as the filler. The thing about this rotation is there's not a whole lot of thinking that I really have to do. I kind of just use my buttons whenever I want, which I don't necessarily think is a good thing. I don't really have to think about it. My rotation is very set out in stone. I just, cast a UA whenever I have a shard available. I cast Haunt on CD, and I spam Shadow Bolt. Whether or not some Warlocks are going to like that, because it's going to be fairly fast-paced on single target, any sort of movement is really going to hurt your overall DPS. Just being efficient is going to be leading to good DPS rather than using your buttons at proper times. So that's just kind of some stuff you want to be thinking about for the Haunt gameplay. Now, when you go to Deathbolt, as I said, you probably don't want to be talented into Creeping Death. But when you go to Deathbolt and you go to do a lot of damage to a mob, the way you're going to be wanting to play on single target probably is to line up all of your UAs with the Deathbolt. So you're going to keep your dots on the target. You're going to cast a bunch of Unstable Afflictions. And then you're going to cast Deathbolt with those UA on the target to do a big damage burst to it. Outside of Deathbolt cooldown, you just want to be casting Shadow Bolt like this. So, to me, this doesn't really seem like the most interesting gameplay. I kind of liked having Reap and Drain Soul on single target just because it felt like it gave my abilities purpose, right? I feel like giving abilities purpose is actually really important to World of Warcraft. And right now, I feel like my rotation is basically just cast Unstable Affliction a bunch of times, and then hit Deathbolt, and then spam Shadow Bolt, right? And the rotation is just pretty straightforward in that sense, right? So I definitely feel like there's some stuff here Affliction is lacking on single target, and with these talents, I kind of just feel like the rotation is just not that interesting. However, when we get to multi-target encounters, I feel like Affliction will be a lot of fun to play. You can run talents like Creeping Death, you can run Shadowy Embrace, even though you probably won't. You could. It would let me take it in just a second here. I have to wait for the cooldown. Boom. All right. You can run things like Soul Harvest here. You can run Creeping Death, or here we'll run Siphon Life instead. And what you can actually end up doing is on multiple targets is the rotation actually can be quite cool, where you're maintaining dots on a lot of targets. You're using Shadow Bolt to increase the damage those targets take. Outside of that, you're going to be casting Unstable Afflictions on the mobs that are taking damage, and you're just going to be making sure that you try your best, if you can, to keep these Shadow Bolt procs up. Now obviously that's not going to be easy to do on multiple targets, and whether or not entirely it'll be worth it or not, I am not entirely sure. But either way, Affliction will still be enjoyable to play on multiple targets, which is a good thing. I like multi-dotting. I think most people do. It definitely still feels interesting, even without the Reap Souls, because pretty much on multi-target using Reap Souls whenever it came up, and having the ability to talent into Absolute Corruption will also be just amazing. So say you're talented into Absolute Corruption and you're fighting 3 targets, which I think you most likely will talent into Absolute Corruption. It just seems like a really powerful spell, considering what you can do outside of it, and you're spreading out your Unstable Afflictions. And you can spread out your Shadow Bolts, because you only have 1 dot to maintain, which is your Agony. You can spam out some Shadow Bolts, do a rotation of Shadow Bolts, and then cast a bunch of UAs like this. I could definitely see this rotation being enjoyable in a raid encounter, because you're trying to keep up your 3 stacks of Shadow Embrace on multiple targets, casting Unstable Affliction in between. So, I definitely see this being a skill thing, right? It's kind of cool, right? I'm maintaining 3 stacks of Shadowy Embrace on 3 different targets. I'm maintaining Agony on 3 different targets. And if I fuck up, my damage will go to the toilet, right? Kind of cool. I don't know. I like it. But again, single target lacking is definitely a big deal for me. So yeah, this is kind of Affliction on the alpha right now. Let me know what you guys think. Let me know what you guys think can be improved, not improved. Definitely, I think losing the artifact ability, as well as Drain Soul, as well as the ability to Shard Snipe, is just a huge deal, and really feels like the Affliction class doesn't feel as full as it could. I'm going to be covering Destro and Demo again, probably in the future. I will say Destro plays the exact same as it does on live right now, and Demonology is reworked to be a class and a spec that is fantastic. So, Definitely positive things looking up for Warlock. Affliction, again, positives. It's fun on multiple targets. It's intensive on multiple targets. It feels pretty much the same on multiple targets. Having a passive contagion is awesome. But on single target, again, the rotation is just so boring in my opinion. It's just unfortunate that it had to go down that way. But either way, let me know what you guys think. Thanks for watching. I don't want to make this too long. Have a good one.